This is your first time to the channel, welcome. My name is Scott. I am a practicing physician assistant working in endocrinology. I'm also a type 1 diabetic. If you're not subscribed to the channel and you're interested in diabetes related news, tech talk, product reviews, please go ahead and subscribe. I'm going to be coming out with new content all of the time. So this video is going to be a head-to-head of all of the newest, the latest pumps that are out on the market, the Medtronic 780G, the Omnipod 5, and the Tandem X2. So let's get started. First thing that I wanted to start with is the CGM that each pump is going to use, the continuous glucose monitor. Now for the Omnipod 5, it's going to be using the Dexcom G6 and presumably the G7 once that comes out later on. The Tandem Tandem X2 is the same. It's going to be using the Dexcom G6 as well as the G7, I've heard, once that comes out. The Medtronic's the only one that's using its own proprietary system, which is going to be the Guardian, both the 3 and the 4, depending on the availability where you're at. Now this is where Medtronic has a little bit of a disadvantage due to the CGM. Now, the Guardian 4, which is their latest model, has a 7-day wear time compared to the Dexcom, which has a 10-day wear time, and the MARD, which is basically the accuracy of the CGM. So the Guardian 4 is coming in at about a 10.5, and MARD, the lower the score, the better the accuracy. So about a 10.5 for the Guardian 4, where the Dexcom is coming in at an even 9. So as far as the Omnipod 5 and the Tandem Tandem X2, they have a little bit better, a little bit more of an edge here with the CGM because they're using the Dexcom, which has a longer wear time and a better accuracy. Next, let's talk about the automated insulin delivery system in each one. With the Omnipod, it's called Smart Adjust. With the Medtronic, it's called Smart Guard, and then the Tandem, it's called Control IQ. Different ways, basically saying the same thing. This is a controlled automated basal as well as bolus delivery system, depending on the pump we're talking about. So there's a lot of different features built into these. Let's break it down and talk a little bit more about the automatic insulin delivery system in each pump. So let's first talk about the target glucose level that you can set in each individual pump. So essentially what this is the automated insulin delivery system. You set it at a certain glucose level and it tries to maintain that glucose level throughout the day. Now, if we're talking about the Tandem, unfortunately the Tandem is locked in at 110 glucose target no matter what. When the Tandem Control IQ is activated, your target blood glucose is set at 110. You can't adjust that unless you're in exercise mode and some of the other features that we'll talk about later. With the Omnipod 5, you have some flexibility here. You can actually set it from 110 all the way up to 150, and you can set 8 different profiles throughout the day. And then talking about the Medtronic 780G, you do have some flexibility, but not a lot. You can set it anywhere from 100 to 120, which would be in 10-unit increments, so 100, 110, 120, anywhere within that range. The good thing about the Medtronic is, though, that you can actually set the lowest glucose target of all of them. Remember, Tandem was set at 110, Omnipod was anywhere from 110 to 150, but the Medtronic is the only one you can set all the way down to 100, which is important for a lot of people. Let's talk about the prediction time next for the automated insulin delivery system. So what these pumps do is they not only look at the current glucose value to make adjustments in your basal and your bolus rates, they also look to the future and predict, are you going to have a high blood sugar at some point in the future? Are you going to have a low blood sugar, to start to make changes before it even happens? Now, depending on the pump we're talking about, these values can change. For instance, the Tandem, the Tandem X2, looks 30 minutes into the future and makes adjustments based upon not only the glucose value currently, but also 30 minutes, what it predicts 30 minutes into the future. The Medtronic is similar. It also looks 30 minutes ahead and tries to make adjustments, basically just to prevent hypoglycemia is all they listed. Not anything specific about blood glucose trending higher, but they look 30 minutes into the future like the Tandem. And then the Omnipod, it makes quite a claim, and I don't know because we'll have to see when this is actually out in the wild and how well it's actually performing, but it's the only one that claims to look 60 minutes into the future to make changes in your basal rate to try to prevent both high and low blood sugar. So 60 minutes, only one Omnipod that makes this claim to look 60 minutes into the future to make adjustments. Again, Tandem is going to be 30 and the Medtronic will be 30 as well. Okay, another big thing that I wanted to talk about with these automated insulin delivery systems is the auto correction or the auto bolus. Now, some pumps have it, some don't. So let's talk about that. Let's break it down and talk about who has it and who doesn't, because this is a really important thing. So with the automated insulin delivery system, the main thing is either increasing your basal rate or decreasing or potentially shutting it off to prevent hypoglycemia. But that can only do so much. Sometimes you actually need a nice big bolus to basically prevent a high blood sugar from happening, or one that's kind of gotten out of control. Now, not all the pumps can do this. So first, let's talk about the Tandem, the Tandem, the X2. So Tandem at or above 180, if it's already at the max basal rate, it'll start to auto bolus. Now, it can do this once an hour, and that's going to help bring down the blood sugars faster. Medtronic does this as well. Once it hits its set max auto basal delivery limit, once that's reached and the blood glucose is above 120, an auto correction will kick in, giving boluses every 5 minutes up to 12 corrections an hour, which is pretty significant if you compare that to the t:slim, which only does 1 bolus an hour. Now, when we're talking about the Omnipod 5, unfortunately, it doesn't have an auto bolus built in. It only has basal rate adjustments. So this is kind of a big thing for a lot of people and something definitely to consider when you're thinking about different pumps. Now, again, the Omnipod 5 does predict 60 minutes instead of the 30, so it may be able to prevent some of these things, and maybe it doesn't need the bolus, but it does not have the auto correction or the auto bolus feature. It's the only one that does not. Again, the t:slim does. It can do it once an hour, and then the Medtronic does as well. It can correct up to 12 times an hour. Okay, another big thing for pumps and something that I know a lot of people definitely use is the exercise mode or the activity mode. So all three pumps have this in all different fashions. So let's talk about a little bit of the different pumps and how they use this exercise mode. So with the t:slim, what it does in exercise mode, when you activate that, instead of the 110 target glucose value we talked about before, it actually shoots for a 140 to 160 range to keep you a little bit further away from those low blood sugars and try to prevent some of that hypoglycemia when you're exercising. Omnipod 5 has the same thing. It's called HypoProtect or activity feature. You can set how many hours you want it turned on for, anywhere from 1 to 24 hours. And what it does is not only does it set your target window higher all the way up to 150, it also automatically decreases your basal rate as soon as it's turned on. So it sets a higher 150 and decreases the basal rate for the pump. And then finally for the Medtronic, it doesn't have something called an activity or exercise mode. It's just basically called a temporary target. Essentially, that's what this is. It's an exercise or activity mode to prevent hypoglycemia. It sets a target of 150 like the Omnipod, and you can set it up to 24 hours. It doesn't mention anything about automatically decreasing the basal, but it does shoot at that higher target window to try to prevent those hypoglycemia. So of the three, it looks like the Omnipod probably has the most features because it automatically decreases the basal where the others don't. They shoot for the higher target window, which in turn would decrease your basal rate, but the Omnipod seems to take it a little bit further with the exercise or the HypoProtect mode. Okay, another thing I wanted to talk about that's not always talked about with pumps is, but some of these pumps have these artificial intelligence or these adaptation modes where they learn day to day your different insulin needs and try to make adjustments to help prevent both highs and low blood sugars. So let's first talk about the Omnipod 5. So the Omnipod 5 does have the ability to learn with each pod. So your day-to-day blood sugars, it improves as days go on and kind of learns. It has this artificial intelligence to learn, adapt to your lifestyle, and adjust based upon these changes. So every time you change a new pod out, it's going to look at how much insulin you used, your sensitivity factors, and things like that, and try to make adjustments in the future to give you better control. Medtronic has a feature as well, and what it lists is that it has adaptive features where it calculates and changes both insulin sensitivity factor and total daily insulin every 24-hour period. So the t:slim X2 is unfortunately the only one that doesn't have this adaptation like the Omnipod and the Medtronic. All right, let's talk about bolusing because that's one of the main things with pumps. You're going to be doing that every single day. How smart is the bolus features that are built into these pumps? So the t:slim, what the t:slim does, like all of the pumps, it looks at your current glucose values, it looks at how much insulin you have on board, and then it looks at how many carbs you're going to eat. And then from that information, it calculates a bolus for you. Now, all of the pumps have this. This isn't any different. And these are basically the, I guess you could say, the base features of all the pumps, because some of the other ones add some additional features onto this. So let's talk about the Omnipod next. So the Omnipod 5 takes it a little bit further. So it looks at your current glucose values, it looks at how many carbs you're going to eat, and then it also looks at your insulin on board. But then what it also does is it looks at your glucose trend. So it looks, are you currently heading to a high blood sugar? Are you heading to a hypoglycemia? And then it makes adjustments based on that as well. Not just your current glucose value, but your trend in addition. So that takes it a little bit further than the t:slim. So the Medtronic 780G does the same things, all the other ones I talked about already, insulin on board, carbs, and then current glucose value. It adds something in addition to that though, not the same as the Omnipod, but something similar in a way. So it's a little bit vague, but what it states is that it uses a safety module. So when you put everything in, your glucose values, your current carbs, and then your insulin on board, it takes that calculation, but then it puts it through a safety module, and it looks at the bolus calculated, and it uses glucose prediction algorithms, that's what they're stating, to predict if this bolus can cause hypoglycemia. If it predicts that it will cause hypoglycemia from this algorithm, it makes adjustments based on that, so it can basically decrease the dose. So no specifics to this, how it's getting these values, what these algorithms involve, but it goes through an additional safety module to make sure the calculated dose won't cause a low blood sugar. So again, I don't know how well this works. It's kind of vague, but it does take an additional step in addition to the carbs, insulin on board, and then the current glucose value. Okay, let's talk about extended bolus next. This is something that if you're a pump user and you've had pizza before, you very likely have used this before, and if you haven't, you definitely should. So extended boluses are available on all the pumps, but let's talk about the specific details of each. So the Medtronic 780G is probably the most feature-packed one because it has not only a dual-wave bolus, but a square-wave bolus as well, which is the only one that has both. So Medtronic 780G has both. You can use both of them, but there's a caveat to that. So the Medtronic 780G, you can only use an extended bolus if you're not in SmartGuard feature. So if you're using the SmartGuard feature, the automated insulin delivery system, which you'll likely be using if you're using the pump, you cannot do an extended wave bolus. Now the Omnipod, same thing. Omnipod 5 has a dual wave bolus or an extended bolus built in where you can give half up front or 30% up front, another 70% later. But again, you can't use it if you're using the automated feature. So you can only use it if you're in manual mode. So the Medtronic and the Omnipod, you do have that extended bolus, but you cannot use it in your automated mode, which honestly, most of the time you're going to be in automated mode. So that's kind of a bummer. Now, the only one you can is actually the Tandem. The t:slim does have that extended bolus where you can use that even if you're in automated mode. Now, the problem with that is it doesn't let you set it for maybe 4 hours later. It only lets you extend it up to 2 hours, but it's the only one that allows you to do that in automated mode. So even when you're in Control-IQ, the Tandem, the t:slim will still let you do an extended bolus. So it's definitely a plus with this pump to allow that feature even in automated mode. With the Medtronic and the Omnipod do not allow that. Okay, next let's talk about your pump controllers. How are you going to give your boluses and change your basal rates, etc.? Now the t:slim, up until just recently, you could only do it from the pump controller itself. There was no other way to do that. Now, as of February, it got FDA approved to have a mobile bolus feature. So you can bolus straight from your phone and visualize everything else as well. Now, as of the time of this recording, it's still not out yet, but they promised by summer of 2022 that will be available. So any month now, you'll be able to not only control your pump from the pump controller, but your phone as well. Now, Omnipod at launch will allow you to use your smartphone exclusively if you'd like, or if you don't have a smartphone that's going to be compatible, you could use one of their pump controllers, which is basically an Android phone that's kind of locked down to just the pump. Now, the only thing that kind of is not so great about the Omnipod 5 is at launch, they're only going to allow you to use Android phones, and there's not a lot available. I think it's basically just on a few Samsung phones at this time. In time, they definitely plan to roll this out to iOS, to iPhones, but at launch, you're only going to be able to use it on select Android phones with the Omnipod 5. Now, Medtronic 780G is the only one that does not allow you to control the pump from your phone. Now, there is an app you can use, and you can do it through Bluetooth, where you can view the settings on your pump, and you can view everything that's going on, your CGM data, but you can't do anything. So it's basically just a way to view it. It's like remote viewing, but you can't make any dose adjustments, boluses, and things like that from your smartphone at this time, or at least at the time of this recording. So finally, let's talk about how many units you can hold in each one of the pumps. So the Tandem and the Medtronic can both hold 300 units. The Omnipod is the only one that can only hold 200, and that's only because it's cordless. It's not hooked up to a large pump controller, so that's the only one that can only hold 200. So you have to keep in mind how much insulin you're using daily. Okay, and finally, when can you get your hands on one of these pumps? So if we're talking about the Tandem t:slim X2, obviously that's been out for a number of years. That's their most current pump. The X3 is coming sometime in the future, but I didn't want to go over that because there's not enough details to compare in a head-to-head of all the different pumps. Now, the Omnipod 5 has been FDA approved here in the United States, should be out in the next few months. They're basically staying at this time, sometime summer of 2022 in the United States. Europe and other parts going to be a little bit longer, but it should be hopefully by sometimes towards the end of this year. And the Medtronic 780G, basically if you're anywhere except for the United States, you can get your hands on this right now. It's available in many, many countries across the world. The United States is one of the last places to get this, but I've been told that they're shooting also for some time in the summer to release that here in the United States. I'm basically told at any point now, it could be coming out any month, the Medtronic 780G here in the United States. So that was a head-to-head of the Medtronic 780G, the Omnipod 5, and the Tandem t:slim X2. I hope that was helpful. If you liked the videos, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and thank you so much for watching the video.